Okay, so if you haven't had a chance to read it or haven't seen the article yet, Guitar Player magazine, just the last couple weeks, about a month ago, so it's very recent. Eric Johnson, there's an article in there on Eric Johnson, guitar virtuoso, and he gives his top 5 tips for guitar players. And I found it very, very interesting. For some of all the articles I've read over the years, this one really hit me and hit me good, because as I'm going through these top 5 techniques or tips, I realized that I've incorporated some of these exercises, practices, routines into my playing and my teaching. So I found it very, very interesting. I think all but one I've actually done, and that one that I don't do, I probably should do and do a better job at it. But the link to the full article is below, and I'm going to paraphrase these 5 tips as we go along here. So hopefully you enjoy it. Hopefully it just kind of gives you an idea in terms of what some of our guitar heroes do, for their practice routine. So let's go check it out. But if you haven't done so, please like, subscribe, follow the channel. A lot of content has come, a lot more to come. But let's get into this. We're going to get into the 5 tips that Eric Johnson suggests us guitarists should follow. So number 1. Okay, so the first tip that Eric Johnson mentioned is just, and I'm going to paraphrase these as we go along. You've got to go slow to go fast, which makes a lot of sense. When I first picked up the guitar, all I wanted to do was shred and play fast, and I still can't do it. But you want to be able to play slow to play fast. It seems boring, but eventually it just catches up with you, and before you know it, you are moving much quicker up the fretboard. So practice slow, just scales, or even just exercises. Very boring, I get it, but that kind of helps you generate your speed, right? So even if you're learning riffs, tunes, you want to be able to play them fast or as fast as you need to, but you've got to go slow at first. Doesn't sound like much, but when you put it all together, okay? That's number 1. Let's move on to number 2. Okay, second one, it's learning how to control your strings by muting and keeping things as quiet as you can when these strings aren't being used. If you hear it, even right now, again, with the volume up on the amp, my guitar, and I kind of leave the strings hanging out there with nothing, I won't say protecting them, you can start to hear some feedback. Maybe you can hear it, maybe you can't. But every time I touch the strings, it comes through. So really what he's trying to say is learn how to mute your strings in ways where you don't have to worry about that extra noise coming through. If you're going to play a chord, but you want to be able to cover it up quickly, some palm muting. And it's really kind of a dance routine between your 2 hands in terms of trying to, whether you're using the blade, part of your palm here, to mute the strings at the bridge. Again, all I'm doing is pick is in hand. I'm just using this here as the guitar is resting on me. And you can't hear anything. So even as I pick, I'm still able to cover the strings to kind of, and did you hear that? I took my hand off. Maybe you can hear it. It's sound that you don't really want. And it's a matter of working with this hand for palm muting as well. Some of the notes. Maybe sometimes you want it open. Cover it up. So keep that in mind as you're practicing and playing, especially if you're playing live. If you're not going to roll the volume knob down, or you're in the middle of playing, obviously, make sure you're covering up those strings when you don't want that unnecessary noise coming through. Number 3. This one I thought was probably the best one of the 5, because I've seen myself doing this not only since I started playing guitar, but even as a kid years ago. When I started playing guitar, I started listening to music and songs a lot differently, and I started listening to other areas of music I really didn't get into. One of them being country, because as you realized with country, some great guitar players. So I started getting into that because of some of these players. But if you want to go even further back to me being a kid, and I think people who grew up in the New York metro area, I grew up in New Jersey, just a few miles from the Meadowlands over in Clifton, New Jersey. The oldie station in New York was CBS FM 101.1. Cousin Brucey, Bobby J, Harry Harrison, the Morning Mare, all those guys, right? So I wasn't a fan of it at the time, but I really do appreciate now the music that my parents listened to. And again, there was so much music, but being able to listen to the Beach Boys and Frankie Valli, to hear the vocal harmonies, the Platters, the Four Tops, you name it. I'm naming just a few because everything else is just kind of going out of my head right now. But Smokey Robinson, the whole Motown scene, right? Philly Soul, the whole thing. So being able to kind of have that in the back of my head at times when you're listening to music, and then down the road when you're trying to find some grooves, it really did come in handy. So I think that was probably one of the best things I had heard Eric Johnson say about, tips for guitars. Keep your mind open. Listen to a lot of different music. Number 4. All right, for this one, I admit I don't do it at all. If maybe a little bit early on in my career, my playing days, using a metronome. I just never did it. It didn't do anything for me. I would say, though, I learned to play in time much better when I got into band situations and you had to learn songs. And you think, I can learn this song, and you learn it, but then you've got to play along to the record or this, whatever it was, and you realize your timing just isn't there because of how quickly you think something might be slow, but it's much quicker than you think. So playing to records and playing to music is the way I kind of have built up my way of being able to play, with time signatures in time. So keep that in mind. Metronome is probably a great way to kind of practice your scales. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you can just change the tempo. But I've never really done that. So shame on me, but maybe I'll start doing it. Last one, number 5. Number 5, I find myself in every day. We should all find ourselves in this one every day. Always being a better player. Never stop being a student. Always keep learning. You're never going to learn it all. I don't care how great you are. If you think you've already learned something, you can't learn anymore, there are other areas you can go into. You're into rock, you can go into jazz. You're into jazz, you can go into blues. There's always something that you can do to better yourself. So keep that in mind. So always practice, always practice. Even if you're practicing 5-10 minutes a day, but you can take something from those practice sessions, hold on to it because you're always going to need it down the road, okay? So that was the 5th one. So appreciate it. Much appreciated, actually. I thought this was kind of a good way to kind of just chat for a little bit. If you haven't done so, again, the link to the article is in the description here. Guitar Player magazine. This 5 tips by Eric Johnson. I thought it was really a good read, so check it out. And I will see you down the road.